2-year-old Hamish likes to fly. He adores his older sister, Kaylee, loves his mum, Emma, and Mark, his father, is his hero. Mark is a hands-on dad.
Is he good at drawing Barbie dolls? Is he?
He's also a dead-set legend.
Have you explained to Kaylee what Daddy did?
She knows Daddy did something very brave and Daddy got an award for it. And she is aware that Daddy saved someone, but I don't think she knows the full story.
The full story is one of the greatest in Australia's military history.
1 o'clock!
Ambushed and outnumbered by the Taliban. Under savage fire, Mark risks his life to save the life of another.
He was out there, I needed to go get him. It's as simple as that.
It earns him the Victoria Cross. But a few years earlier, this was Mark, a punk and a drunk heading towards prison.
So how does a guy go from that to becoming one of Australia's most decorated war heroes?
It's a good question. Sometimes it amazes me myself when I think back to those days and now look at where I am now.
Mark grew up in the small town of Dorrigo in northern New South Wales. He has an older brother, Brent. His mum, Bernadette, a dental nurse. His dad, Greg, a Vietnam veteran who had trouble returning to normal life.
The only thing he ever really used to say was, don't ever join the military, or don't ever join the army, so.
Just before your father passed away, he came into your bedroom after he'd been at one of those meetings at the RSL to talk about PTSD. Do you remember what he said?
He came up to me and he sort of gave me one of those dad to son hugs and he said, I love you. And that was weird for me because he'd never really done that before. It was pretty much the next day that he died. And my dad had a massive heart attack and one of his lungs collapsed and that was it. They lost him after that, so.
Fair to say you went off the rails a bit more after your dad died?
Yeah, that's fair to say. My mum, she tried, definitely. She did what she could, but I was too stubborn and determined to do whatever I wanted to do.
To use an old-fashioned term, Mark ran with a bad crowd.
We were smashing windows and pushing trolleys into things and breaking cars and, just a little path of destruction along the way. And why? I mean, I look back and I go, why did I do that?
No offence, but I don't think I would have liked you very much.
I don't think I would have liked myself now, back then,
Back then, when he was 17...
At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Mark and a mate gate-crashed the dawn service in Sydney's Martin Place.
We were yahooing and carrying on, and
It was Anzac Day.
It was Anzac Day. All these old guys are staring at us. It's almost like they're looking at me saying, how disrespectful. And it was, I didn't realise it. I was too drunk, didn't care, Didn't mean anything to me at the time, and that's how bad I was.
And things got worse. When Mark was 20, he was arrested for vagrancy in Coffs Harbour and fined $300.
What did the magistrate say to you?
Basically, he called me a piece of shit. He said, that's his words, you are a piece of shit.
By now, Mark had left home. But he stayed close to his mum, Bernadette.
She was a very trusting woman, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was. She's one of the nicest people I've ever known.
You were very wary of this male friend of your mum's, Chris Watts, weren't you?
Yeah, I had a feeling about him. I didn't like him, He seemed nice enough, but there was just something about him.
Mark was right to be worried.
The disappearance of Bernadette Donaldson from the close-knit mountaintop community of Dorrigo in April 1998 rocked the town.
When his mother went missing, police suspected foul play. Her body has never been found.
The police had found blood, signs of a struggle. They decided that she'd been murdered, and the most likely suspect was Chris Watt. I'm still angry about it, and then the way he, afterwards, he'd written 2 letters and then he went and took a bunch of pills and went to sleep, committed suicide, a couple of days after.
It's gutless.
Yeah, it's cowardly in my mind, It's a coward's way out. It drove me to change, though, I think. It was a motivating factor in sorting myself out. I wanted to move on and, fix myself up.
For all his misspent youth, at his heart, Mark is a patriot.
I was at my brother's place in Newcastle and September 11th had happened, and I'd watched the planes flying into the buildings.
After 9/11, Mark joined the army. He not only wanted to be a soldier, he wanted to serve in the elite Special Air Service.
What attracted you about the SAS?
It was dangerous, it was different. From all accounts, they grew their hair long, they had beards. They were the first to go. They were the first ones to be stepping off the helicopter or whatever it was. They test themselves all the time, so I think that's the attraction.
He was charming and he was funny and he was sort of shy, but I was not getting involved with an army man.
It was during his training that Mark met Emma. She was working for the SAS as a communications specialist.
As soon as she walked in the door, mate, I remember looking at her eyes and the smile, and a voice in my head just said, yeah, you're in trouble here, so... it was, for me, it was an instant thing, and I never thought it would happen. I never thought that would happen to me.
It was just his crazy dancing and his sense of humour, and next thing I knew, that was it. From that night on, we were together.
They started a family and got married.
Tuesday morning, Grandma woke up at 7 o'clock.
One day he'll be doing the dishes, the next putting his life in danger. When Mark goes into battle, he's not alone. Combat assault dogs often led the way in Afghanistan on some of their most dangerous missions. Mark's first and favourite dog was a Belgian Malinois named Devil.
Something about that dog, when I first saw him, I was like, if I could have a dog, that's the dog I want.
Devil's job was to make sure it was safe for Mark and other soldiers to follow. On one raid, he saved their lives.
He kept going back into this room, and the last time I was like, stuff it, mate. If you want to go in the room, go in the room. And then I heard a commotion, in the room, and I've turned, and Devil's got a hold of this guy who had a gun, and...
So there was a bloke hiding there?
There was a bloke hiding in the room, He was above the doorway waiting to basically shoot one of us as we stuck our head through the door.
Good boy! Good boy!
How did you feel on another tour when Devil was killed?
That was hard, it's still hard. He was my best mate.
Devil is remembered here at SAS headquarters in Perth, as are all of the SAS soldiers who've made the ultimate sacrifice.
This is where their names will live forever, I guess. This is where we can come and remember them.
Among those names, Blaine Diddams, or Dids, who died in the same gun battle as Devil. He's survived by his wife, Tony Ann, known as TA, and their 2 children.
Sorry. I remember when Mark phoned, it was about 2 a.m. in the morning, to let me know Dids had died. And I just lay there, just thinking about TA and what she would be going through, what her kids would be going through, and you just think how devastating that is. And you just hope that their last conversation was a good conversation, or that all their memories are just good memories. And you know they're not going to be for a long time.
It was quiet, it was pretty dead still.
That all changed at 3 p.m. when a small convoy of Australian, US and Afghan troops came under sudden attack from a much larger force.
Heavy machine gun fire initially, RPGs, a couple of mortars.
It was a Taliban ambush.
So we were surrounded, essentially. They had us in a good spot. We were on our own, and there wasn't really anyone that was going to get us out of it except us.
Gunfire and grenades came from all directions.
You could feel the rounds whipping past their heads, hitting the vehicle. I could feel the metal, like splashing off.
The battle would last over 3 hours.
After a while, the most noisiest thing I think is your own breath. You're in the moment, you're running around, you're looking at everything that's going on, you're trying to process it. One of the RPGs bounced off the bonnet and another RPG exploded just above the rear of the vehicle. I saw 2 of the guys get blown up out of the back of that vehicle.
1 American was killed and 9 Australians were wounded, as were 2 Afghan interpreters, one of whom was dangerously exposed and in danger of bleeding to death.
Just lying down on his face and then pull the blood around his face. And I said, I'm going to go out there and grab him. He was out there, I needed to go get him. I ran out there, was getting chased by bullets. It's almost like a Wild West dance. I got him up to his feet. I got my shoulder underneath him. I just kept going. I had to get to that car in front. I thought, no, if I stop now, that's it. I'm going to cop it.
Mark carried the wounded interpreter 80 metres, all the while being shot at by the Taliban.
I gave it a crack. I got through there, and he was still alive. Couldn't think of anything worse than being left out in the middle of a paddock, getting shot at, wounded, and everyone else is just driving off and leaving you behind. That to me is like a great sort of description or epitome of loneliness.
When you heard what he'd done and absorbed the enormity of just how insane and crazy it was, did you challenge him about the fact that he'd taken this risk with his life?
I did. I've asked him numerous times, why? What went through your head? Why would you do that? And he goes, nothing went through my head. I saw it needed to be done, I did it.
Are you proud?
I'm extremely proud. I'm proud of who I am. The boy from Dorrigo, the country kid, a little bit wild and, a little bit, maybe rambunctious, but, then you're standing in Windsor Castle meeting the Queen.
I was amazed at this little redhead that I dated was suddenly going to be bigger than Ben-Hur.
Are you proud?
I was proud.
Is there anything about Mark that you'd like to change?
Give him some more hair. But I would choose to have him home more often if I could, and have a 9-to-5 job and a job where he's not leaping out of things, jumping into things, getting shot at, blowing things up, driving over things.
Would you go back into combat if you were called upon?
What, now?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course I would. Of course I would, because that's my job.
Well, mate, you made a country proud, so thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.